There was a need to provide financial services to the Black community, and I really didn't see it being done. We ultimately realized that we had to actually own the bank in order to do it. When I went from Indiantown to Brown, I became embarrassed or ashamed of my roots. Think technology first and think about how we can promote ourselves, how we can do business and leverage technology. AI is good, and I would like our community to run towards it. Don't be dissuaded, don't be hoodwinked into thinking that it is not good. There's this myth out there that we're not good with money. We don't have a spending problem. We don't have a money management problem. We have a problem with discrimination. Your job is what you're paid for. Your calling is what you're made for. I am a promoter of education, recognizing that it is an investment that needs to have a return, and that the return on investment needs to make sense. Because you got into this great school, that doesn't mean you should necessarily go. But when they try to shush me, or when they say something negative, or I realize that it's their issue, it's their problem, it's not mine.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Coffee No Cream podcast. My name is Erin Braxton and I am the host of Coffee No Cream. Here on Coffee No Cream, we are unapologetically dedicated to Black women, and we share what I like to call Coffee No Cream moments, those things that happen to us Black women in business and in life just because we are Black women. Now, today I have Teri Williams. She's the Chief Operating Officer of OneUnited Bank. They are the largest Black-owned bank in the country. Teri talks about her journey to Ivy League institutions. She went to Brown, she went to Harvard. She talks to moving with grace in corporate environments. She talks about why she stepped away from American Express as the youngest Black vice president, to become an owner of a Black bank. And it's just really interesting. And we learn more about OneUnited, which is very impressive. So before we get into it, guys, I just want to ask that you please please share, please subscribe to the podcast. If you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're seeing, hit the subscribe button, hit the hype button, share it with somebody. Leave me a comment for sure, because I'd love to engage with you guys in the comments. We have the Facebook group. The link is below. What else? We've got the free resources tool, coffeenocream.com/free. And yeah, I think that is it. So let's just get into the episode. So welcome, Teri. How are you today?
I'm good, Erin. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm super excited to be here. And I just want to start it off by asking you a question. You walked away from American Express to take over a struggling bank, if I'm not incorrect. Mm-hmm. And most people would call that crazy. Mm-hmm. What did you see that nobody else saw when you made that move?
That's a good question. I have to think back. I think that the main thing that I saw was that there was a need to provide financial services to the Black community, and I really didn't see it being done. Actually, we tried to partner with some banks to offer services directly to the Black community, and we couldn't get any bank to partner with us. So we ultimately realized that we had to actually own the bank in order to do it.
Okay. So when you say we tried, explain
that? Yes. So I had a business partner. He's now my husband. And
yes.
We both own the bank together, and we've been business partners. And we've been married for over 30 years. So yes, it was the two of us. He had worked at Salomon Brothers. He was working at Salomon Brothers at the time. I was at American Express. But yeah, we realized that, in order to do what we wanted to do, which was to lift up the Black community and focus specifically on economic well-being, banking, financial services, that in order to do that, we actually had to own a bank.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So, what year was that?
Oh, 95. I had to think
95.
back.
Okay.
95.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. And, this has always been because I've looked at, it's like, do I need to get a bank account with them? Like, do I need to open a bank account with them? So, tell us a little bit about your journey though. Okay. Cause I know you've got the Ivy League background. I want to know more. I want people to know who Teri is, where Teri came from, how Teri got to be the owner of a bank.
Yeah. So it's funny you would ask that question the way you did, because usually I would answer that question, or for years, by giving my resume. But what I realized in my 50s, so a little too old to have realized this, that I am who I am because of my great-grandmother. We called her Ma Honey. Everybody else called her Miss Honey. Her name was Annie Coachman. And she owned a penny candy store where I used to work, a barbecue pit where she sold barbecue, a juke joint where I learned how to play pool, and a bunch of rental apartments. And I used to follow her around to collect rent. So she owned these businesses on the black side of town in this small town called Indiantown, Florida, in Booker Park. And really, since I was born, I mean, she owned those businesses for before I was born, in the 40s. And so my whole life, I was raised in an entrepreneurial community. I didn't think of her that way. I didn't think of her as a businesswoman. I just thought of her as my great-grandmother. But I realized that when I went from Indiantown to Brown, I became embarrassed or ashamed of my roots.
Yeah.
And I buried her and my whole upbringing, the first 17 years of my life. I buried and started to give credit to my success to Brown University, majoring in economics and Harvard Business School and all that stuff. And now, as I have aged and really thought the origins of my success, I realized it was my great-grandmother.
I love that. Because we've talked about on the podcast how Black women were the most educated. We hold all of these degrees and certifications, and we put so much emphasis on them, and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But we're more than that, right? And when I recently did an episode, because I think that as we try to navigate what's going on right now politically, we're trying to figure out, when we're losing our jobs, if we try to go get another corporate job, we're trying to stay so, hard and true to what it is we were trained to do, educated to do. There's other facets of us. And I talked about how my father, I live in St. Louis, grew up in St. Louis, and my dad's 82. And when we drive around St. Louis, he's pointing out what used to be here and what used to be there, and this abandoned building and that abandoned building. And I just wish I could have seen it, all the Black businesses that were there. And then white flight happened, and then Black folks moved out to the suburbs, and, we don't have those businesses anymore. So we were doing all of the things before,
Yep. Black Wall Street and all of that. Yes.
All of the things. So, but yeah, maybe talk about that, because I'm sure you see like so many businesses, and, now my whole thing is everybody's a consultant, right? I consult too. Like I say this and I'm laughing at myself, but I also have, rental property and other things, but, what are you seeing? Like, what are you seeing, like these epiphanies that Black people are having, Black business owners, things like that, when it comes to maybe stepping away from corporate? I don't know. Like, I'm curious to what you see.
Yeah. I think, we sort of are going into different directions. I do think that we recognize that corporate America or government jobs carry a risk. I think we thought of them as safe jobs, and being an entrepreneur as being risky. But we're now realizing that, there's a risk to that path as well.
Sure.
And so, and so a lot of us are, whether it's, doing something on the side or, leaving our corporate, our quote, safe jobs and starting businesses or even acquiring businesses, which, I definitely, promote. I think we're starting to see those avenues as being, more fulfilling, and maybe even more secure. So that's one path that we're seeing, and we're seeing it with the huge, increase in new businesses that has happened since the pandemic, particularly in the Black community, but also with women and just across the board. I think the other thing is that we're also seeing the importance of technology. So, when I think of my great-grandmother and her businesses, if she had only had social media,
right.
People used to come from like West Palm Beach and drive all the way to Indiantown to get a barbecue. But if she had social media, she would have had people from Miami. She would have had people from all over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're starting to recognize that, with our businesses, I don't care whether they're brick and mortar or whether they're, consulting or, what they are, that we really need to think technology first and think about how we can promote ourselves, how we can do business and leverage technology. So those are the things that I see are happening in our community.
I love that you said that, because I've been on this whole like self-promotion thing. And it's hard, I think, for Black women to self-promote because in so many instances we've been diminished. And I talk about my journey and, the things that I've done are amazing, but I don't see them as amazing. I just see them as regular. And, mediocre, maybe white men just are willing to promote themselves so loudly and so strongly. And I talk about using technology, using AI to extract the value of what it is you bring to the table, as opposed to, I do this task, I do this task, I do this task. Yeah, we all know we can do tasks, but what is the value that you bring to the table so you can start to charge for that value? So I did get some feedback about AI is bad. This is bad for Black people. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I say the opposite. Actually, AI is good, and I would like our community to run towards it. It is a new technology, which means that we have the benefit of starting in the same place as the rest of the world. Today, no one knows how to best use AI. So we can be first movers. The bank, we just introduced a program called Wise One, and it uses AI to be a personal financial assistant for you in your pocket 24/7. You can talk to it about your finances, and it all remains within the bank. It doesn't go out into, the stratosphere to train other, agents. It stays within the bank, but it does use AI to give you insights into your money and help you make better decisions. So and you can find that at OneUnited.com/wise one. I want to say that because if your listeners are interested, but we really want our community to embrace AI and don't be dissuaded, don't be hoodwinked into thinking that it is not good. Now, what I will say is that it does matter who is building the services. When we were building Wise One, we built it for our community. We built it in a way so that everyone can benefit. And so it does matter, sort of who built the agents, for lack of a better term.
Right.
But the actual tool itself is incredibly powerful, and we should run to it.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get into finances, because I've been waiting for somebody financial to get a financial expert, and not say you're a financial expert, but you do own a bank, so I'm assuming you have some expertise there. When it comes to Black women, what do you think the biggest financial mistakes that we're making are right now?
So, first of all, I want to start with the financial wins before I get
Okay.
to the mistakes.
Okay.
Because there's this myth out there that we're not good with money, and that's the opposite from what is true. That is untrue. We are actually very good with money. There have been all kinds of studies on this that need to get a lot more attention. In fact, I think the Federal Reserve in St. Louis did one of the studies.
Okay.
And what it shows is that, if we, and I'm going to say it in layman's terms, if we were paid the same for the work that we did as others, there would be no wealth gap. So it's not us. We don't have a spending problem. We don't have a money management problem. We have a problem with discrimination.
Yeah.
So, that's the first thing. It's not to sort of blame ourselves for where we are. We actually have made a lot of progress, as I call it, made a dollar out of 15 cents. We're more educated. We're more entrepreneurial. I mean, there's so many things that we've accomplished, even with the barriers. So I think that's the first thing is to recognize is that we are actually good with money.
Mm-hmm.
I think the second thing is that the things that we've done, whether it's figuring out how to make a dollar stretch further, whether it's, saving and putting, money away for family and giving to family and church and other organizations to help our community. Those are the same things that are now being done by others. A lot of folks, that don't look like us, were, as I call it, born on third base and think they hit a triple. and,
I love that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and so things were always, going well for them. They, went to school. In some cases, didn't go to school, got good jobs, made enough money to buy a home, send their kids, take vacations and all that kind of stuff. Whereas we have always had to struggle. Well, now the world is struggling. A lot of Americans are struggling. And we know how to persevere through a struggle. We know how to pivot. We know how to figure out, how do I succeed in this environment? So I do want to start with that because I think sometimes we focus first and sometimes only on our challenges as opposed to our assets. But when I get to one of the things we could do better, I would say save, save, save. And save automatically. And I say this to everyone, I don't care what race or gender or whatever, particularly Americans, because we're not as good at it as other parts of the world. But you really need to set up an automatic savings account so that money goes, basically directly into your savings account and not into your pocket. If it goes into your pocket, and when I say pocket, I mean like into your checking account, into your spending account, into your physical pocket. If it goes into your pocket, you're more likely to spend it.
Yeah.
And so putting it away, I can guarantee you're not going to miss it. You're just not going to miss it. You're going to spend all the money that went into your pocket, but the money that went into your savings account, you're not going to miss. And then you're going to look up, 6 months from now, a year from now, and say, oh my gosh, I now have, this emergency fund. I now have this vacation fund. I now have enough to invest. I now have, some savings. And, it is true that most Americans do not have enough savings. So that's one of the things that I think, I guess I can call it a mistake, but I think it's more that I would just recommend we make this change and set up an automatic savings account.
What do you say? You talked about this a little bit, I guess, with saving, and you talked about we're able to make, like stretch, make $1 out of 15 cents, stretch that money that we're getting. You talked about the wealth gap and us not being able to make the money. We're not on par with other groups. But let's talk about the difference between building wealth and building income, because a lot of us confuse the two. Yeah. A lot of us think if we just make more money, we would be better off. But, my dad always told me it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you can keep. Yeah. And so talk about that.
Yeah. So yes, I'm glad you brought this up, and there is a big difference between income and wealth. And you could have someone that doesn't have a lot of income but has tremendous wealth. We hear about them all the time. The janitor that left $1 million. So it is possible to have low income and build wealth. It is also possible to have a lot of income and not be wealthy. And again, you hear about that where, whether it's athletes or celebrities who, have to file bankruptcy. One of the things that I say to everyone is, don't try to keep up with the Joneses or the Kardashians. Don't look at your neighbor and say, I want to do what they do. Because what you can see are their assets, but you can't see their liabilities. You can't see the loans that they, took out in order to have the things that you're seeing. And it is really important for all of us to be in tune with our finances, to budget, to not overspend, to spend within our means. And again, I get back to setting up that automatic savings account. What I'd also say is, when you think about wealth, don't think about it, well, maybe I'll say it differently. Think about the purpose of wealth. You're not building wealth just to have it. Just like you're not building a savings account just to have a savings account. You're building it with a purpose in mind. And that goes back to, what is your purpose? What is your purpose on this earth? What are the things that you want to accomplish? Is it starting a business? Is it starting a family? Is it, is it, rising up in corporate America? I mean, what is your purpose? And use your savings and your wealth to promote, to foster, to support that purpose.
Yeah, you're talking about keeping up with the Joneses. I'm in Texas right now. I live in St. Louis. Had to go to my friend's kids are like my god kids graduation in Dallas. And I drove to Houston, where I am right now. Mm-hmm. And I lived in Texas. I lived in Dallas for 11 years, and I was younger, right? Mm-hmm. But when I come back here now, like, everything is just so over the top. It is just crazy. Yeah. And you're just looking around like, is it possible that all these people have this much money? Because I remember a girl told me when I interned here years ago, she's like, people here don't have more money. They're just more flashy, And I was just like, yes, they are. Everything is over the top. And you can get so bamboozled and stress yourself out looking at, because here everybody has everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, these houses are insane. It's like, this many people have this much money, and they just happen to live in this state. This is crazy. So I like what you're saying about keeping up with the Joneses, because I'm just looking around. Like, I just was telling a girlfriend of mine who's going through a separation, and she's gotten into a smaller home, and she wants to upgrade it. And I'm just like, why? Why do you want to upgrade it? Do you want to take on all the debt and the money to operate a big home in Texas and run these big electric bills, and to run, to get the pool, like, all the things, No shade to anybody who wants that. You know what I'm saying? But it is, I think you're definitely affected, because here everybody is just very much trying to keep up, know, and I think certain cities are like that, you know, and you might find yourself in those environments.
And it's also, even for the people that have those things, it is expensive and sometimes hard to keep up, even with themselves. And yeah, I say, you know, same thing, you know, no shade to those that have, you know, worked hard and accomplished a lot to, you know, to build, you know, all of that. I just say be careful about emulating them and really figuring out, you know, your own path.
What you want.
Right, what you want.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I got out of college, I moved to New York. And I lived in Bed-Stuy, you know, shout out to Bed-Stuy. And I remember visiting a friend good friend who lived in Memphis, Tennessee. And she had this beautiful house with a pool. And it was just, you know, a wonderful home. And I, on the other hand, was living in this, you know, rinky-dink, you know, apartment in Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy, yeah.
And it was like the contrast between the two. But yet I lived in New York because I had a purpose. I wanted to learn. At the time, I was working for Bank of America. I wanted that experience before I went to business school, you know. I, you know, worked at America, you know, so I was there for a purpose, and I was happy for her, but I knew that my path was different. And so it is important for, you know, for everyone to figure out what's your path, not, you know, sort of emulating someone else's path that may not be you.
It's so important. And I think we measure ourselves by other people's success. And so it's just like, I can look at it at my age, you know, and be like, oh, this is lovely. I love it. I'm going to come visit you in that big house with the pool. But I'm not going to have one. I've never wanted that for myself. Like I would rather travel, you know, with my money. And even if, you know, I won the lottery tomorrow, I just don't want to be bothered. I don't think, you know, I say that, I don't think, you know, but, I think, we're very, we can get caught up for sure.
And I think the pandemic really ignited an interest in travel. You know, once we got out of it, particularly for young people. You know, I see young people traveling the world, and that gives them joy. You know, as opposed to maybe a house with a pool.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not so young, but after the pandemic, I was on the move. Like I was in Asia, I was in Europe, I was in South America. And it was just because at that time, those opportunities were put in front of me and people were ready to go. I never attributed it to the pandemic though, but because as soon as I think I met some friends and we met in Paris and we all came back with COVID. You know, so that was just, you know, COVID was still very much a thing, but I think everybody was so just itching to get out. But, but we all have different interests, you know, like people have different hobbies and it may be weird or it may not be what you would do, but I think that's what makes us like all so interesting.
Well, let me also, can I just add something to what we were just talking about? You know, because one of the other things I see in terms of, success is people actually following their passion, you know, and I say this particularly for young people. There was this saying, I'm gonna see if I can find it. Your job is what you're paid for. Your calling is what you're made for.
Yep. I just talked about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you, right. You know?
And so, and I would say that you are going to be more successful if you follow your calling.
Oh my God.
Yes. Because it's going to be really hard for you to compete with someone who it's their calling. If you're just doing it for money and you're just on the grind doing it for money, you're just not going to be as good as someone who really loves what they do and gets up every morning like I do. I get up every morning like, oh my gosh, I love what I do. Like, you're not going to be able to compete with that person. So I love that. Someone said it and I was like, wow, I have to share that.
Tell us what you do. Tell us what you do then. Tell us what you do for those who
don't. So yes. So I, first of all, I live in Boston, Miami, and LA, which is where we have offices. Okay. And, but we are also a digital bank. 90% of our customers come to us online. So in those offices, we have, like in Boston, as an example, we have our IT team who's actually builds the platforms and, uses AI and builds all the services that we offer digitally. Okay. In Miami, we have our creative team, our social media team, and our call center who services our customers who call us from all over the country. And our creative team, we have an artist in residence, and we have a great social team. We have a creative director. We have so all the things that if you go to, OneUnited.com or you follow us on social media, all of the creative, all the wonderful card designs we have, all come out of Miami and that creative team. And then in LA, we have our lending team. We have our finance team. We also have a call center in LA. So we have East Coast, West Coast, so we cover the entire country. So I travel between our offices. I love, Boston, Miami, and LA. And I also feel that it's important for us to embrace growth outside of our individual location. What technology has allowed us to do is to become the largest Black-owned bank because of our digital platform, because we attract people from all over the country. And, I was on a Zoom call with some Black folks in Alaska. There's Alaska Black Chamber of Commerce. And, it was, And so we're everywhere, and it's important for our businesses to recognize that, we're bigger than any particular city or location.
I just want to ask you about the lending, because I recently finished the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses cohort. Yeah. It was a lot, but we did have, they did a nice unit on lending and things like that. And a lot of times I think as Black business owners, as small business owners, if you have a small business that there are no options for you when it comes to lending or building your credit as a small business, or if your credit isn't where you want it to be. So how does OneUnited support small business? Yeah.
So first of all, you said the magic word credit. I'd add credit score to that as well. And one of the things that we focus on is helping people improve their credit score. And we have a variety of programs to do that. We have a secured credit card. We have something called Cash Please. It's a short-term small dollar loan that you can get from us without a credit check. And the great thing about it is that it reports to the credit bureau. And so by paying that loan back, you build your credit. So our focus really has, starts with helping people build their credit score. Because what sometimes people don't understand is they say, okay, I have this business over here and I'm over here. But it's like, no, if you go to a bank, they are actually going to look at your individual credit score as well as the business. So that's one thing that we do to help businesses. The other thing that we do is we actually have a partnership with Lendistry. Lendistry. I think a dentistry is Lendistry. And,
Lendistry,
Yep, and they're Black fintech, Black-owned fintech that provides small business loans. Their criteria, though, is you need to be in business for at least 2 years. Of course, you need to be profitable, and you need to have, decent credit. but we partner with them because what we have found is, small business lending is not our expertise. So we needed to partner someone who it is their expertise. Our focus for lending is on real estate secured lending, specifically home loans, multifamily loans. But in terms of business loans, that's where we partner with Lendistry. And even on that, I would say, one of the things that, a lot of small business owners need to understand is bank lending isn't for startups. People come to me and they say, hey, I have this idea. And I'm like, well, if it's an idea and it's a startup, that's really not a bank loan. A bank lends money to businesses that have cash flow. Now, you can get a loan possibly to buy a business if it has cash flow.
Okay.
And in fact, that's one of the areas I think we need to focus on more is our buying existing businesses, especially given what's happening with, baby boomers aging out. They have all these businesses that they've been running that need to be passed on to the next generation. And they can be anything from, barbershops to small manufacturers to big companies. Yeah. But we need to focus on acquiring businesses. And if you do, there's a possibility that you can finance that acquisition with a bank loan if that business has cash flow.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for saying that. I know everybody is always thinking about starting a business. You hear more about that. Yeah. But acquiring a business, if you can do it, I think a lot of people, even me, who I've had this current business for 13 years, but I would be like, oh, I can't afford that. I can't afford to acquire another business. And you don't think about, now that I've been around for a while, you're just like, you realize everybody has debt in their business. You need debt to grow. Right. And a lot of times we think it's such a bad thing, and debt can actually be a good thing.
Yes.
I'm learning.
Yes.
I'm learning.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to pivot the conversation. I want to talk about Brown and I want to talk about Harvard, because we talk about education a lot as Black women. We talk about being overly educated. We talk about that. And I want to get your take on education in general, advanced degrees, but I also want to talk about what you feel or what you know being in the Ivy League realm has gotten you. You know what I'm saying? Because, I have friends that have gone to Ivy, and I feel like, yeah, it's great networking. Like, it's amazing networking. But I want to ask you, since you're sitting here and you've got that background. So what do you say about Black women right now in our education and how we're just, I think sometimes education is a beautiful thing, I think, for those who want it, and it's definitely necessary. But sometimes I think because we're trying to overcompensate, I think a lot. That's just my opinion. I'm not, you have yours. So I just want to get your take on it.
Yeah. So, first of all, I am a promoter of education in general. However, I really think that the right education depends on you. I'm a big supporter of HBCUs. I do see Ivy League schools as providing a great education. But there are also some really great state schools. UMass is a great state school. All the, California schools are, great. And in Florida, there's, University of Central Florida. There's, there's FAMU. There's so many options. I think really what's more important is to find the right fit. And I mean, education-wise and culturally. I had a challenge going from Indiantown to Brown, not with the academics, but with the cultural shift, to Ivy League. They now do a better job of helping, what they call first gens, or people. I was the first person in my, immediate family to go to college, and So they do a better job there. But I think, part of it is finding the right fit. I think the other thing is to, unlike when we went to school, you really do need to do the math. And I say that because when we went to school, the cost of education was much less. I'm going to use numbers. When I went to Brown, the tuition was $7,000 a year.
Jeez.
And when I left Brown, I made $15,000 a year. Today, the cost of tuition is $70,000 or $80,000. So 10 times what it was when I went to college. People are not leaving school making $150,000 to $200,000. So really, the math doesn't completely add up. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't benefit, throughout your lifetime. But what it does mean is that you have to be very careful about how you go about it. And what I have seen is people going to state schools because they're less expensive, finishing more quickly as opposed to taking the 4 or sometimes 5 years, trying to do it in 3 so that they can save money. HBCUs are a really good value for your money. You can always go to a different grad school. You can go to Ivy League grad school. You don't have to go to Ivy League undergrad. Or you could not go to Ivy League at all. So I think it's really recognizing that it is an investment that needs to have a return, and that the return on investment needs to make sense.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, I guess my god niece nephew, one of them's going to San Diego State, and one of them's staying in Dallas. He got an opportunity to go to Baylor, but it's $90,000 a year. So he's a smart kid. He's like, I don't want that debt. I don't want that debt. And his sister's like, I'll take it. She wants to go off and have an adventure, and that was me. But yeah, it's that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And
student loan debt, as I'm sure is like the highest it's ever been. And you can't get rid of it. It's unlike other debt where you can, whether it's, I hate to say, file bankruptcy or work out some terms that make it easier for you to pay back. Student loans are with you for, in some cases, for a lifetime. So, you just have to be careful and not just run, to something that, again, it goes back to, keeping up with the Joneses, because you got into this great school, that doesn't mean you should necessarily go. Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about when you left. You said you were making $15,000 a year.
Yeah. After college.
Okay. I don't know what year that was. Yeah. But, I when I left college, I was making $22,000, and that was in 1996. So yeah, that was a struggle. But I want to talk about your experience in corporate America, because you were clearly successful in corporate America, clearly. But a lot of Black women are not successful in corporate America. We are dealing with things, and perhaps you dealt with those same things, and you were able to navigate without it affecting, I don't know. So I want to talk about your experience, because we talk a lot about the microaggressions of things that happen to Black women that cause depression and anxiety and all of the things, the stress, the Monday scaries, all of the things. So how was it for you when you left to go to Bank of America?
So I loved my jobs, whether it was Bank of America or American Express. And part of, me loving the jobs was that I was very careful about the choice of the companies I joined. I was faced with a decision, and I'm going to talk about American Express more. I was faced with a decision in business school where I could have gone to work for a consulting firm or an investment bank or American Express and some other corporations. And I chose Amex because I thought it would be fun, that I would enjoy it, doing marketing,
Yeah.
being creative. And I didn't want to go to an environment that where I felt like I had to be someone other than myself. So the first thing I would say is choose wisely. Same issue. I mean, investment banks, consulting firms were offering more money. In fact, today I probably would have made more money if I had taken that route. But I decided that I wanted to do something that was more consistent with who I was, and really, sort of took the lower salary, took, what could be perceived as the lower or the less, trajectory, excuse me, because I wanted to do something where I felt comfortable. So that's number
Right.
one. The second is, I got some really good advice from my mentor at the time, which was Ken Chenault. He ended up becoming the CEO, but at the time he was like VP of Strategic Planning. And he told me to go where there are problems. Go where there are problems.
Okay.
And the way he described it is, if you go to an area in a corporation that's doing really well, and it continues to do well, people are not going to give you any credit for that because they expect it to do well. Whereas if you go to an area where there's a problem and you fix the problem, then you'll get credit for that. And then you'll be able to shine, that people will be able to see you. You'll have more visibility because there was a problem that now has been fixed. And it was really good advice, which is what I did. I went to, as opposed to going to the card division, which was, exciting and everyone wanted to work in card, I went to the traveler's check division, which, doesn't even exist today. Like,
I was going to say, are they still around?
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
not. They're not.
Yeah.
It was a mature product. And I went and, with mature products, what do? You basically use them as a cash cow, which means you need to reduce the cost so you can make more money that you could then invest in your growth businesses, which was the card business. So I went in and figured out how to save millions of dollars.
Mm.
So I think that's the other thing is that, we need to not always go to the areas that are glamorous or that, feel like, okay, this is the place to be,
Yeah.
but actually look in a corporation for the areas that need to be, quote, fixed or better managed, where you could make a difference.
So is that how you became the youngest VP? Did you
Yes,
go in?
it
Yes.
is.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
is. It is how I became the youngest VP. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you left and then you
Mm-hmm.
started. Okay. But so I love that actually being the problem solver is
Mm-hmm.
really what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, um, did you experience, on that journey any issues as a Black woman? I mean, I'm assuming you had to, and because there are Black women who don't want to start their own thing. Everybody shouldn't start their own thing. Corporate is the way for a lot of people. And when learning how to navigate those corporate waters, and I like what you said, because we've talked about this. I know I'm saying a lot of things. Like, I like this. I like this. And you talked about making sure you were careful about the companies that you went to. We've talked
Yes.
about that, vetting
Yes.
them,
Right.
researching the company.
Right.
So, first, let me ask you about that, and then I'll come back and ask you about just navigating as a Black woman. Probably, I'm not sure if you were one of the only, how that felt. But clearly you're a smart woman, you're an intelligent woman. That advice that Ken gave you was some good advice.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it's, going to be a bed of roses. I mean, yes, I definitely the way I would describe it is sort of that feeling you have when you walk into the room and you are the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that happened and happens to this day a lot.
Sure.
Um, uh, this is one where I have to sort of lean on my great grandmother,
Okay.
and the way she walked through the world was like she owned it. And because of that, I just walk into a room like I own it, and I just don't know any other way. I remember when I was in business school, and one of my black friends pulled me aside and said, Terry, you may want to tone down your comments because at Harvard, 50% of your grade is class participation and 50% is the exam. So you're always participating, but she, said, hey, you may want to tone down your comments, which I thought was like, a weird thing to say. And she says, well, I think you're making some of the basically white guys uncomfortable. I was like, and I thought about it just as I listen to all feedback, um, and talk to other people about it. And one of the things that someone said to me that really stuck with me is that they may not like you, but they will respect you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they also ended up liking me as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us to show up in our full selves, like we own the room, and to share, not in a boastful way or not in an arrogant way, but really in a giving way. Share our thoughts to solve the problems. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's all business is solving problems. I mean, I say, okay, you should go, solve problems. That's all business is. If a business isn't solving problems, it's not going to be successful. So you go into these rooms and there's a problem. Otherwise, you're not meeting. You're meeting, it's a problem. Okay, what can you contribute to solving it? And just focus on that first. Not, the fact that you're the only person or that someone might be insulted that you even spoke or that you're even there. Who cares? Just, be your full self and basically, and don't talk just to be talking, but
Mm-hmm.
basically share your thoughts on how to solve the problem.
So when somebody tries to diminish you, somebody tries to shush you, somebody tries to not give you your opportunity, somebody tries to take your idea. I mean, these are all the things that have come up, right? Take credit. You navigate that by what? Just showing up with
Grace.
confidence, grace. Okay.
Grace, absolute grace. Yes, even to this day, I get the shush or I get the, or the comments. Like probably to this podcast, someone's going to say something,
Right. Of course.
Yes. And I don't let the tone bother me. I try to focus on the words and whether or not it's constructive.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the tone, I always respond with grace because, I think tone says more about them than it does me. So when they try to shush me or when they say something negative or, I realize that it's their issue. It's their problem. It's not mine. And I do feel, I don't just respond with grace. I feel for their pain. I actually do care that whatever pain they've experienced in their life, which is coming out to me in a negative way, I'm sorry about. I really am. So it's not even like a phony grace. I actually do feel graceful towards graceful, not
Yeah.
grateful, but
Yeah.
graceful towards that individual because it to me, it does say more about them than it does me.
that's like growth. I mean, that is like, I mean, especially to some of our younger viewers, it is hard. And when I was younger, that was not me. I'm better now, but I'm just saying that is hard. I feel like, but I love that. I love that. And just getting your mind in that space to be able to engage in that way, because it's not going to go away. You're not going to change people. You're not going to change who they are.
Let me say you do change them. So I disagree. I think you do change them by showing grace. You do change them because people keep hitting. If someone's not hitting back, they eventually exhale, and you see them change. I see them change all the time. I mean, people have come up to me, and said, "Oh, I thought this, and now I see, I see that," or I was raised to think, whatever, black people weren't, as good as, and now, through you, I see that's not the case. So everything I've been taught is not true. I mean, I've seen that. I experienced that over and over again. So yes, you do change. You do change. I mean, not everybody, and but you do change a lot of people, and you also don't ingest that negativity. You don't make it like, that you don't ingest their pain, and that is healthy for you. For us. I don't have to accept your definition of me. And that's getting back to my honey. That's why it was such a aha moment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I ingested this pain. When I got to Brown and you all made me feel ashamed of being from Indiantown, I actually ingested that. And I need to throw that back up because I'm proud of my great grandmother. I'm proud of, my roots. And so I really, and at the same time, I'm not mad at them for making me feel how they made me feel. I'm not mad at them. I look now and I don't have any hard feelings about it. I just am not going to digest it. So I think that's the other thing. By showing them grace, do not digest their negativity.
Yeah, and what I meant is by going after them with that. If they come at you with this, you go back at them with that. You're not going to change them with that, right? I've had some crazy stuff said to me, and you're just like, oh, why do you think that? Why do you say, I don't ever, I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to go toe to toe with you on that, because you're not changing anybody's mind. In fact, you're feeding into it, right? So that's what
Yes. And I agree with you.
Yeah. So I love your calm approach. I love your graceful approach. That's because a lot of us, we don't want to be confrontational. And I think sometimes when things happen to us, I know for me in my past, and you're just like, you're trying to determine, whoa, what was that? Was that what I thought that was? Am I crazy? Trying to figure out how to handle a situation. So I like the approach that you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, you're not crazy, first of all. I want to say that.
No.
Right?
No.
Right.
And I think that's been the beauty of this podcast. I think a lot of us have felt that way because sometimes it's so subtle. It's just like,
yes,
was that what I thought? But, and especially when you have had the beauty of you went from Indiantown to Brown. You were in these spaces, and a lot of us, when we go to work, especially if you go from, where you're from to maybe you go to an HBCU and then you get into the corporate environment, that's your first time being in these white spaces, so tough. So you got a little probably comeuppance and some education in college, So, so we've been talking for a while. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the bank, and because honestly, I think I'm gonna just, when we get off this call later today or tomorrow, go open up my own bank account there. because I want a place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I've
yeah.
always, one of my friends and I have always we've talked about your bank as well. Like
Mhm.
we need to open up bank accounts. So tell us what we need to
Mhm.
know as Black women, what we need to know about your bank and why it's important for us to invest our money there and be a part of One United.
Yeah. We're first starting with it is a bank. And I say that because there are a lot of fintechs out there, but One United
Hmm.
Bank is FDIC insured financial institution. So it is a bank.
And explain fintech really quick to people who don't
Yeah,
know. So they,
yeah, yeah. So there are a lot of technology companies that offer financial services, but they're not a bank. And the difference between the two is that they're not regulated. They don't have regulators coming in once a year to, make sure that everything is safe and sound um, and that your privacy is protected and all of that. So that's the difference is that we are regulated and everything that you see on our website or if you come into a branch or that I even tell you today is 100% accurate, 1,000% accurate. Because otherwise, the regulators would come in and say, you can't do that. Whereas the fintechs don't have that regulatory body. Um, and your deposit is FDIC insured. So again, put your money with a fintech, may not be. In the case of a bank, it is. So that's number one. The second is for One United, we are a digital bank as well as a brick and mortar. So you can go into a branch, but you can also open up an account online in minutes. You can directly deposit your paycheck, of which we will give you your money 2 days early, or up to
oh,
2 days early, I should say. So we'll as soon as we know what your deposit is, we will give it to you. Someone just asked me the other day, well, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, the question is why don't other banks do it? Because they know what you're getting, and so why don't they
yeah,
make it available to you? They in a
yeah,
lot of cases they actually get it and then they hold it till Friday.
right.
So
Mm.
we do give it to you as soon as as soon as we get it. As soon as we, yes, are notified that the deposit is coming. The other is that we offer services that, no other bank offers. We have the largest surcharge-free ATM network than any other bank in the country.
I was
You
just
can
about
go
to ask you
to,
about that.
yes, you can get money out of 7-Eleven, Walgreens. You can go to a Chase Bank branch, a Citibank branch, and if you are a customer of One United, take money out with no fee.
Wow.
We
Okay.
have we have the largest surcharge-free ATM network of any other bank in the country. And the reason is we recognize that for our community, those $3.50 or $4, in some case $5 add up. So, and we also know that a lot of our community is in a banking desert. So they are going into a 7-Eleven or a Walgreens to get cash. And so we wanted to make sure that, our customers have access to their money for no fee. We also have something called Cash Please. It's a short-term small dollar loan because, again, we see in our community a lot of check cashers, payday lenders, and charging 300-400% for you to get a loan. So with our Cash Please, which charges 21%, I think it's 22% actually. It's 22%. You can get a short-term small dollar loan without a credit check. You do have to bank with us for a while, so you can't just come in and get it. But if you do bank with us for a while, you become eligible for that short-term small dollar loan. And the other great thing about it is that with check cashers, they only report to the bureau if you don't pay them. So they can only hurt your credit. We actually report to the bureaus when you pay us, so it can improve your credit. So that's another, again, what we do is we look at banking rules and we figure out ways to use them to our benefit. We, let's see, what else can I tell you? Our focus, we have financial literacy is our focus. We just introduced Wise One. It will give you a personal financial coach that will be in your pocket 24/7. It will look at your finances. It will tell you, who's overbilling you, who's double billing you,
Oh,
whether or not your bills are going up and to a particular merchant, it will tell you, how many no spend days you have. That's the one I love. You say, oh, last
Yeah.
week you had 5 no spend days.
What day is that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're like,
What day is it?
yeah, exactly. And so, but it's a great tool. It does use AI for good. Uses AI for good. It helps you better understand your money. It can tell you how to pay down your debt, how to improve your credit score, and you can talk to it. It's not, as we say, we speak human, not bank. We don't throw in a bunch of acronyms and try to make it hard for you to, understand what's going on with your money. It'll tell you, okay, you need to, reduce your spending because you're about to overdraw, or you're about to, run out of money. I mean, it just gives you in plain speak. This is another good one. A lot of us, we get family members to ask us for money.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a common theme in our community. Can I borrow? Because they look at us and they say, oh, you got it. Can I borrow? Well, all you have to do is ask wise one, what can I afford to lend?
Oh. Or lose.
Well, that's the other thing. Yes. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
But and we have a whole bunch of information about, sort of lending, giving family members money.
Yeah.
So we really do deal with the things that are going on in our community. But the biggest thing is trust. What we're trying to do is to help us trust each other. Because that's one of the things that's missing in our community is there's a lack of trust. When we were all there living on, I'll call it the black side of town, we knew everybody. We went into businesses. We had a community. But as, we've moved out and become integrated, we have, when we were growing up, we used to hear this saying that their ice is colder. My kids, when I say that, they look at me like I'm crazy. But I was like, no, when we were younger, it was like if you had a choice between a white doctor and a black doctor, you went to the white doctor. You think about that. That black doctor has had to get, work harder. They've had to do more in order to be successful. We know we got to work twice as hard, to get the same amount of credit. But yet we still don't trust that we're going to get, the best care, the best services from our businesses. And we're A+ rated, Better Business Bureau. You look at our reviews, we get great reviews for our customer service. So you are going to be in a great place if you bank with us. And I would say that's true of all the black banks. I'm a big promoter of all. There's 19 of us. And there's a bank in your community, and if there isn't, come to OneUnited. Go to OneUnited.com and open up an account with OneUnited.
I love that. One question. You guys have Zelle, right?
No,
Do you use Zelle?
we
No.
don't. No.
Okay.
And
Okay.
for a reason.
Okay.
So we do. You can use Cash App, Venmo. You can
Right.
use Apple Pay, all that kind of stuff. The only service we don't offer that people do talk about is Zelle, and the reason is that we and I want to say no shade to Zelle, but it probably is shade. We just found the fraud to be too much.
Okay. Understood. Well, I heard, and I don't know this, but I heard that the banks that came together to create Zelle, I was to their benefit. I don't know. Like, I haven't researched Zelle. I do use it a lot, so that's why I asked, because
Yeah.
everything you've said is fantastic.
Yes. So what we have found, and there, I think Zelle is getting better. It used to, they're improving, but we've just found a lot of our customers have had negative experiences with Zelle, and so for us, we have stayed away from it. But we do offer something called Money Moves. So in addition to Cash App, Venmo, and all the other stuff, we offer something called Money Moves, where you can pay someone who has, any of the, in other words, it's agnostic. You can pay someone with us without them having Venmo, Cash App, or any of those. You just send them the money directly, and it goes into, and it uses their phone and can go directly into their bank account. So we do have Money Moves, and the only thing we don't have is Zelle. And for intentionally.
Well, we appreciate that. I did not. Yep. Yeah. Well, Teri, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, this has been a great conversation. Mm-hmm. Everyone, they can go to tell us where we can find you, the bank.
Yep. You can go to OneUnited, OneUnited.com. That's where you can find the bank. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can also check out our podcast, which is about my great-grandmother. It's called Who's Your Ma Honey? And you can find that on YouTube. And you can learn more about my journey, as well as my co-host, Suzanne McDowell. We call ourselves the Honeys, in honor of my great-grandmother. But thank you for having me. My daughter's name is Erin. Erin.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, I have a sister named Erica, so it's the E's.
Oh, yes. If I didn't name her Erin, I would have named her Erica.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like my name very much.
Yes.
So, yes. Good name. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Teri. This has been wonderful. I think the viewers are going to really enjoy this one. So,
well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And we will see you in the next one.